I'll do is share my screen too. And I know, Sophie, you know me. Jan, this is the first time we've met, I think. So nice to meet you. I'm Thelma. I'm a holistic counsellor, psychotherapist, and I've worked at a mental health retreat as well as my own one-on-one practice. And all the topics I bring, I have been teaching at the mental health retreat as well. I have finished up work there now, but I've taught there and I've worked with people on these topics and seen very live, all different types of people working on their challenges, on their trauma, on whatever came up for them, different ages, genders, just different challenges. So I've been in the very thick of it all. So a bit of a background for me. So today, can you see the screen? If you just give me a thumbs up. Yep, fantastic. You might have seen me promoting this. So last week I did a video. I'm not sure if you watched the replay, but I did a video on what are feelings. And now I'm doing a video on what's the difference between feeling our feelings and processing our feelings. So often we may come up with it's something like an activation in the body where we identify a feeling from that activation. What do we do with that is the question as well. So the processing around this that we'll talk about, I'll just give you an example. So say if I become activated and I go through my sensations, what I'm feeling, what I'm noticing in my body, and then I go, oh, I'm feeling like I'm not being cared for. Like that's the sense I'm getting. That's the story I'm experiencing. Now, how do I process that feeling or that experience? And that's what we'll go into, because there's a difference. So on the left, you'll see, if you did watch last week's, feeling is more being with the feeling and accepting and honoring what comes up by giving it attention. So that's a bit different to processing. As we are starting to process in the first one, to be with my emotions, because we're asking questions. So we are starting to process it. What am I feeling? What are my sensations? What is the emotion? The difference between what I do in my work, the difference between just feeling and then processing, is that there's always a reason for the activation to come up in the first place. And what we want to do is we want to notice the activation. And so let's say for the example here is not feeling cared for. I might have become activated at work by my boss. I don't feel cared for. Maybe I'm activated by a partner where they don't consider me and I don't feel cared for with them. So I need to get to the root cause of this, because if I'm responding from that place, what I might be doing is creating the same outcomes. So what I do is build a relationship with that part and start to listen to it and understand it. So that's what I've done in terms of starting to feel the emotion and be with it. But then I also, to process it, I need to listen, understand, and rewrite the story, because often our activations are coming from a subconscious belief system, an imprint that is happening from a past experience. It doesn't mean the current experience isn't true. It just means that we might be more heightened and hypervigilant to certain situations. So as you can see in the processing part, it's I need to meet the need by taking action and caring for myself. So that's the difference between just feeling and then processing. Once we process, we have awareness. And with that awareness, we want to change the way we behave. We want to change the outcome by changing the way we behave. We start to have more boundaries and standards because we're really honoring that part that feels activated. Okay, so how do I process my emotions? Different types of therapies. I have a number of therapies here, and it might be all of these, it might be one of these to process certain stories, experiences, or activations. But what I'm saying here is that it's not just one thing. Often it is a number of different ways that we can process depending on the situation. If it's relational activation, generally working with a therapist and doing inner child work or somatic work can be really supportive. I do have things like sound healing and breath work there too, because there are times when we go in because we're slowing down, we're feeling our emotions, and some processing is happening. The only thing with that, and the same with ayahuasca and any sort of substance that people take to do healing with, that sort of thing, yes, you process emotions in that, but it's missing is the integration piece. So it's the same with working with a therapist. You process the emotion, you might have a release, a resolve, and almost like this lightness come up. And then after that, there's more work to be done. So it might mean with this awareness that I've learned, how do I integrate this process as well? So that would be another masterclass that I would talk about, actually integrating what you've learned. But so these are all different ways that you can process your emotions. So flashbacks are indicators that there's unprocessed emotions. So we could be doing all these other therapies. Maybe we're doing sound healing, yoga. We might be doing breath work, and we find that we're still not resolving some of our trauma. We might even be doing ayahuasca, medicinal, whatever it is, that sort of stuff, and we still find we're having flashbacks. They can be visuals and they can be emotional. So sometimes flashbacks are not actually necessarily just visual. That is an indicator that there's unprocessed emotions there. There's an unprocessed wound, trauma there that really needs to be looked at. Our body is constantly sending us signals, and we naturally want to heal. Like any animal, plant, anything that's living naturally wants to heal or grow in the most nourishing way. It's the same as like if you give a plant all the nutrients, the sun, the best conditions to live in, it's the same for humans. So this is something important to know. So why we find it difficult to process our emotions, and sometimes we don't even know we're doing it, and it can be suppressed or repressed. And sometimes we minimize the experience. It's generally because we're fearful of feeling the emotion that might be underneath. So if I'm scared to feel my emotions, I might be suppressing it without even knowing that I'm doing it, because it's scary. The thought of even going into that space is too scary, because there's a sense of maybe worthlessness, powerlessness, helplessness. Like there's this sense that we have that maybe if I go into it, I won't be able to come out of it. That's a common fear that I get in my practice as well, especially with people who have had severe trauma. If I go into it, what if I get stuck in a depressive state and I can't come back out? So that's why it's really important to do it with a professional, especially if you're fearful to go into it and process your emotions. You want someone there to help co-regulate with you. So if you have a goal, intention, or outcome that you want and you're unable to achieve it, this is another way you can see that there's like unprocessed emotions, an emotional block, people tend to call it. It's the same reoccurring pattern. That's often a sign. It's when we find it hard to do something and we're like, what is it? Why can't I find the reason why this is happening? So this is just there's a lot of information there. I've just got that there for me to be able to read it for you as well, and to remember it. But what happens is we have a cue. The cue generally is something that's our environment, the person in front of us. It's something that we respond to in different ways depending on our past experiences. So the cue could be work. You go to work. It could be just your workplace. And then the trigger activation is your instinct, your intuition, your response to danger. And then you've got your feeling. So these are the steps we tend to take when we're activated. We then feel, the emotion and feelings after that, and then the thought process comes in, the action and the result. And so what we want to do when we're processing our emotions, we want to start to look at the thought process, because generally that is in charge when all these other things are happening. There's a trigger, there's an emotional state that we're going into, and the thought process comes along a little later. And then we tend to take action though from the thoughts, but what processing and feeling your emotions is doing, it's actually becoming really clear on what's the cue that's triggered this response, that's created this emotional feeling, or this emotion within me. It's making me feel maybe unsafe. And then how do my thoughts impact that? Because the thought, if we just go cue to thoughts, then we're responding from a place of we're not understanding what the actual activation is telling us. So that's what I do in my practice, is where I slow it right down so we can get that understanding. And generally our thoughts are, and I've got it here, conscious or unconscious, and there's like the inner critic, the negative bias, there's so much layered in our thoughts. That's why our emotions are actually more accurate than our thoughts with this. And then, if we respond from that in a negative way, then get the same results. So what we could do is we can then plant in, we can be really conscious about how do we want to get our outcome. And that's through, firstly, processing the emotions, the instincts and cues. So that's what you want to do, and become aware of that, so you've got more, you feel more empowered to reach your goal. So every time we become activated, it's an emotional response to a belief system or a story that's been created when we were young. This is generally something Peter Levine even talks about, and many other therapists talk about this as well. It drives our decisions without us even realizing. But the story, generally, it's not till we slow it down and say, oh, why am I becoming really upset right now? What am I telling myself this experience is? And so say for me, I'm not feeling cared for. Okay, so that's when I can go through the process that I showed before. What we resist persists. So unfortunately, the only way through our wounding and our trauma is through it. A lot of people take this as we need to rehash the trauma. And it's not about going back to trauma that you're not thinking about. It's what it is how is it impacting you in this present moment? How does it impact you in your everyday life? And then we go into that in your body, and whatever comes up, we honor that. So it's not about what's your memory of it, because our memory is not actually accurate. It's the feeling and emotional state that we have that's accurate. So that's why we go into the present moment, and that will tell us a lot. You might get visuals, you might get emotions come up because you're slowing it down and being with yourself. You may want to move your body. There'll be different ways that you will process it, but that your body will actually have the inner wisdom to tell you how that is. So it's about feeling your emotions, which I spoke about last week, processing your emotions. With that awareness, you then have the choice to take a different action. So it's not until we have the awareness that we have the choice. A lot of people say, oh, you're making these decisions, you're making these choices. I would say it's not until you become aware of your activations and really go in that you have that awareness and that choice point. So this is what is helpful, is to be aware. And then once you're aware, you take the action. So as I said before, like animals, we have a natural ways the body wants to process and resolve our wounding, trauma, or negative experiences. This is very much Peter Levine's work in somatic experiencing. It's about our natural individual way of how we want to heal from specific experiences. Sometimes it's a body process, sometimes it's inner child work, sometimes it's relational work, so it can vary. Triggers are echoes of memories stored in our bodies. So this is a reference from Peter Levine, and this is what what I truly believe in as well is that our activations are memories stored in the body, and they will present themselves and manifest in many different ways. So working with the body is actually going to the root cause and helps us experience our emotions and sensations in our body. And this is what completes the process. And when we feel complete, usually what happens is we feel a resolve. I think I've said that twice there. And then we can then become curious about a situation. So the reason we can become curious is because it no longer has a heightened impact on us. So we still get activated, but we won't be as activated as we were previously. We will be able to have more awareness. We'll be able to have, speaking on a nervous system level, our ventral online. This means the part of us that can think from our prefrontal cortex. So that means the logic, the reasoning, the just like those sort of things, the analysis. We can think more like that, because we've gone through into the very thing that we might be fearing. So generally then we've reduced the intensity of it, so we can become more curious in situations that we're activated in. So instead of reacting, we respond from an aware and less charged place. So it's not self-sabotage, it's your childhood protector. So why is it that we find it difficult to process emotions, or even go into it? Like we're scared to see a therapist or to see ourselves that deeply. Generally, it was not safe when we were younger. So our protector will come up with lots of different excuses, reasons. It will tell us that therapy sucks. It will tell us that feeling your emotions is not a good idea. Who needs to do it anyway? I've heard, what's the point in me going through it? Like, why do I need to bring it up again? So that's our protector saying, hey, I don't want to go there because it's scary. And so we want to listen to the protector, and we don't want to overwhelm our nervous system, but we do want to also see that the protector is no longer needed the way that it was when we were a child. So we need to build a relationship with the protector and reassure it that we're going to keep it safe, and that we're going to not bulldoze through and go back into traumatic experiences and overwhelm that system. So I've got here why we avoid processing our emotions, and how do I know when I have unprocessed emotions. I spoke a little bit about that already. So our attachment wounding comes in, reinforces belief systems. So this means that, if we're in a relationship where it keeps us small, we might be fearful to leave because it means we need to stand on our own 2 feet. We could be fearful of being alone. So there's a lot of fear-based stuff that comes up for us, and it's not conscious. These generally are lying in the subconscious, and it's not until you start to explore and answer questions, or slow down, where you start to see, oh, there's actually fear there, which is why I find it difficult to go in and process my emotions, or to go into the hard stuff that I really don't want to go into. It's part of our identity. We've created our personality around the way that we are. So if I become aware of an emotional process, and within that awareness I need to change something in my life, then that is connecting to my identity. And it can be really scary for us to lose a part of our identity, which is why we really need to nurture that protector and give it what it needs so it feels safe in that. Once you become aware that we are creating the life it is feeling, it's a confronting feeling. So the one-on-one work that I do, it can be really confronting for people to know that maybe in their relationship they don't have boundaries, so they're not as happy, or maybe the workplace environment they're in is really not healthy for them. It can be a really confronting thing to know that. And the reason why I give those examples is because if we've got trauma, often we can reinforce that belief system by being in those environments that were created when we were young. And so we will be in those environments. It would be really hard to leave, because our protector will be like, no, this is fine. No, we'll stay here. It pays well. or at least you're not alone, at least you get income each week. So it will kind of give us all these reasons why we should stay in unhealthy environments. So the awareness of processing your emotions can actually be more confronting if you're not willing to make the changes. So this is why a lot of people don't do the work. The fear or going into emotions that feel intense. So sometimes it can feel overwhelming for people where their whole nervous system wants them to shut down and freeze. So the protector is actually there for a reason, and it's trying to protect them from shutting down and freezing. So the nervous system shutting down and freezing. So there's good reasons for sometimes not wanting to go into it. The fear of feeling powerless, weak, the fear of feeling shame. So this happens a lot for men who are conditioned to be strong and powerful and, you know, big business owners and CEOs. That it can be common that it's scary to go into the feeling of powerlessness, or feeling weak. So because when we process our emotions, we've got to be with the emotion that comes up. So maybe sadness or shame might come up, and it makes us feel small, and it can make us feel scared and weak. So a lot of people are not willing to feel that and are avoiding those very things in life. The fear of realizing the relationship you're in is not supporting your growth. So there's that as well, which I've already mentioned. So ways this manifests in everyday life. So yeah, I've been speaking, there's more attached to people who are not supporting your growth and needs, not relying on anyone and being independent. So this can be on the other side, hyper independence. I don't need anyone. Workaholics, as I said, the CEO of a company that grew in an abusive environment. This is actually something common that I did see at the mental health retreat I worked at. Is very successful people who grew up in abusive environments that became successful to become happy and for power, and then realized that they hadn't done the inner work to feel the inner confidence and power. So that is common to know that someone's got unprocessed emotions when that is happening, and they don't have deep connections in their life. They've got many material things, but nothing that's like inner connected. There's many relationships that they're not connected with or have broken down in their lives as well, where they've had, you know, they've got maybe say a typical situation could be they've got a wife with kids and the wife has left them and they've got, you know, custody of the kids, but they are really quite unhappy with their life, and they say things like, I would give all my possessions if I could have my connections back again. So it's a common thing if we haven't processed our emotions from or our trauma from growing up. It can also manifest as sex addiction, substance addiction, shopaholic, exercise addiction, love addiction. So this is more for the anxious people out there. Love addiction is common. And yeah, all addictions, any addictions and any unhealthy relationship things that we have with ourselves and others comes from, we lack empathy in that, because it's a very taking energy that comes in. What I mean by that is, you will know, if you know anyone with addiction in your life, they don't tend to think about you. They are just thinking about themselves. And this can be, this is very common, and this is, yeah, it can be common in the dating world. It can be common in the work world, where you've got like managers that might just care about the bottom dollar or whatever. I think that's, I don't know what the saying is, but anyway, they might just care about money, but not the people. So we lack empathy when we have addictions. The reason being is the thought process in that is so loud that it justifies the addiction. It convinces you that this is the only way and that it's okay. You're not doing any harm to anyone else, but in the reality of it, you actually are. So people around you would probably think differently. It can also be the quiet person, keeps to themselves, using alcohol at night to relax, looking for quick fixes, hyper-focused with your looks and weight, perfectionism. So all these things are ways that we can be suppressing our emotions. So it's just a signal. It's not to judge ourselves in it. It's just showing us that this is how it's manifested. This is just a signal that's come up, and this is how we learn to cope as children. So it's really important we don't judge ourselves for it, though. It's very much just a learned behavioral coping mechanism. So the only way to process your emotions is to go towards the very thing that you're avoiding. So create healthier habits, create deeper, healthier connections with people. You become more solid in yourself. So these are ways it benefits you. You go for your goals and dreams because your self-worth has improved. This makes it sound easy, but it obviously is not that easy because we're changing our identity. All these things are about changing who you are, because you have boundaries, you have standards, you've got values, you know what your needs are to help you feel balanced and healthy. You stop creating unhealthy outcome. I mean, that one is in the way. Maybe you don't completely stop creating unhealthy outcomes, because sometimes we can't help how other people are in our lives. But what I mean by that is it will be less common for you to have those unhealthy outcomes. And you become healthier. So is it easy and is it always great? No, but we can deal with stress better, and we have more of a tolerance to stress as well, because we're processing our emotions. We're not becoming so quickly activated with situations. So here are some questions you can ask yourself to get to know, maybe if you've got something that you're avoiding. What are my coping mechanisms? What are the reoccurring patterns or outcomes of this coping mechanism? Where am I justifying an unhealthy situation because I am fearful or addicted? And addicted can be, we can all have addictive tendencies. So I'm addicted to my phone. Like, that's an addictive tendency. And I think many of us are. And so we can have addictive tendencies that also keep us from feeling our feelings. How is that impacting your ability to grow the best version of yourself? So, we can think about it, even say, let's say I'm addicted to my phone. I always look at my phone. How does that impact me? It impacts me because I could be doing something that's more connected with people. I could be doing something that's better for my health. So what I do is I make sure I put my phone away at certain times. I make sure I don't sit on my phone for long periods of time, and I put things in place. So going for walks, I don't take my phone when I walk my dog. I don't take my phone when I'm at the beach. When I'm with people and friends, I'm not on my phone. So I have boundaries around my phone. But if I was to go deeper into the processing of that emotion of why I'm addicted to my phone, I would say it's because of loneliness and I'm looking for connection. So when I've processed it, that's what's come up. So yeah, asking these questions: what would I be doing if I didn't have this coping mechanism? How would my life be different if I believed in myself and I believed I can't see it, I could have more in life than what I'm having right now? What am I avoiding, and why is it scary? Okay, so that is it. So what we'll do is, in terms of, because there's two of you, you are more than welcome to have questions, but I'm going to be really direct with the questions that I ask back and towards your question, just to make it clean, and because there's a time limit as well. But I would love to hear if you have a question for today, and who would like to go first?
I will. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Sophie.
That was great.
Yeah,
thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, really, really clear.
Good.
I just want it to sink in more.
Yeah, got it recorded.
Yeah. I had, I think, a few questions. I feel like I'm getting to the point where I know when something comes up and I sit in it, but I don't necessarily name or label it, or have that kind of motivation to go through the steps of like the processing. And so I feel like I just sit in things for a good chunk of time. And I'm like, yes, I'm allowing myself to sit in it for as long as I need, but how long is too long? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, how do you kind of like zip off what's
Mm.
happening?
Yeah, so you're saying that what you're finding is you become activated and then you go to feel into that activation, but you're not feeling much there and not able to go into it. So you're like, okay, how long do I take till, how long do I leave it to be able to process it? Is that what you mean?
I'm feeling what I'm feeling in my body, and like, I'll have a reaction, like I'll cry, or I'll, have like a kind of a release, but then it's like, man, what the heck was that even about? Like, yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Okay. Yes. So there's not much awareness before the activation. So you're not aware of what happened before it and then it happened and then
yeah. And it's like, how long do you allow yourself to, kind of just sit in the tears or the, yeah, and
yeah.
it's
So
almost like it's being processed, but then it's not because there's a residue.
there's residue. What's the residue? Tell me about the residue.
It's like not being able to sleep,
Hmm.
because, there's still parts in my mind that are like playing out, even though
Yes.
I think that I've gone through it, but it's like, I don't think that I really have, because obviously, yeah, the sleepless nights, or like, the overthinking, or yeah, like the kind of sabotage behaviors come in.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah, it sounds like it's what I'm hearing is that there might be a shutdown response happening on your with your nervous system. And so
Mm.
it's trying to process. So, like you said, you might cry and feel it, and then you say there's residue. So, I'm thinking sometimes we can be conditioned after, like, with even showing emotions or feeling, expressing emotions. So, the residue could be also like a resistance to what just happened as well, without knowing. Like, it could be like, a judgment that's happening there without you even realizing it, or it also could be that your body's still in a shutdown response as well. So the state you're being, you need a state change. And what I mean by that, I'll give you an example. I might have a really hard day. I would have a really hard day at the mental health retreat, and I could not think my way or feel my way through the emotions that were coming up for me, or I couldn't even go into it. So what I'll do is I'll come home and I grab my dog and I just took her for a walk. So I took her for a vigorous walk, and I did some jogging as well, because I needed to change my state, because I knew my thinking wouldn't be accurate and it just wouldn't be helpful at that point. So I moved my body. But if I was in a shutdown response, that was probably more anxious. I was more in a fight flight response. If I was in a shutdown response, I would probably do some different stuff, like have a hot shower, or nurture myself in any way that I could. It
Yeah,
would be very nurturing. It'd be small movement, so moving, maybe a bit of like dance or swaying. So it would be really light movement. Um,
yeah, I know. Yeah, you've mentioned this to me, but it's like the doing part of it, when you're on your own and like you've got no one there to kind of like help
uh-huh.
you through. Yeah,
So would you be laying in bed when this is happening?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I try
And
to
is
get
your
up, and I get up and I'll make a tea, or I'll move, or I'll do something that I think is going to help. But sometimes it just like continues to just loop. Yeah.
looping, and generally see, and this would be more one-on-one to go into the experience, because, and this is a really good example of unprocessed something. There's something unprocessed, And it's not that you're not trying all the things, it's that you might need someone to help you process it.
I think so. Yeah, and that's why you're my girl.
Yeah. So absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
You're doing all the things, and this is the tricky thing about, and it sounds like you're not really using a lot of coping mechanisms because it wouldn't come up for you if you were. You're not really numbing out. You're like, it's there because you're trying to be with it as well. So you're doing all the things that you're possibly can.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
And one just other quick one was, can unprocessed trauma or like flashbacks like you spoke about at the beginning, can they come through dreams as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It's happening a lot. Yeah.
We can have reoccurring dreams. We can have childhood dreams.
Mm.
So if you've got a dream that reoccurs, or there's one that you remember from childhood that you had often, that's definitely a way to process in therapy, like to process your emotions. It's yeah, it's our subconscious trying to process while it's sleeping.
Yeah. And it's just like there's some dreams where they just stick with you for like sometimes days
Yes,
because you're like, what the heck was that about?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So I do dream work too, so we can work on that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you for such great questions. Jan. Jeanette, is it? Or is it Jan?
Yeah, no, Jan's good, thanks.
Okay, great. Hello.
Hi. I don't remember the question that I asked you. Have you got it?
It might have been so. I was wondering if it was you or someone else. I might have got it wrong. I'll have a look. I'll have a look and see if I have it. Oh, yes, I do. Is it, what's your last name? Yep, I do. Okay. Is it okay if I read it out?
Yeah, that's good.
I agree that it's important to feel your feelings. I've found myself in many situations over many years that did not serve me. My question is, how do we know whether the decisions we made that didn't serve us were because we didn't listen to our intuition and feelings, or whether the outcome of that decision was ultimately meant for our growth and evolution? I love that question. Thank you. So, what comes to mind with that question is that um, you know how I said, unless we've got the awareness, we really don't have the choice. Yeah, so that really connects to that question, because until we become aware and then we make decisions from that place, it's really hard for us to know what is our intuition and what is fear. So if we're making decisions based on our fear, or if we're making decisions based with our intuition, and this is a real tricky one because our fear is our instinct as well, it's our intuition. So the best that we can do is reflect on those experiences. And I do believe what you say there around it being, yeah, for our growth and evolution, as long as we look back and reflect and say, okay, what can I learn from that? I think that's really huge, because often it's not until we learn from those experiences and bring the awareness in that we can make a different choice later on.
Yeah, I love that. And that having that awareness is huge.
Yes, it is big.
Yeah, and I can just see so many patterns in my life, around so many things, relationships, that sort of thing,
Yes.
where I have the awareness now, but the awareness certainly wasn't there at the time.
Yes.
So yeah, that's huge.
Exactly. And I've made some terrible decisions too that I was like, oh my gosh, I did not have the awareness then. As they do say, and in the modality that I use, is that as we get older, we become more conscious, right? We become more aware, and so we become wiser. And that's the sort of thing to look at, is that the past experiences were definitely our lessons, and I think what they do intuitively for us is when we are in an experience that reminds us of those past experiences, we will become activated. And now in that activation, that's where you can learn and be like, oh, it reminds me of that experience I had. What is happening in this situation? What are the qualities in this experience that reminds me of this past experience? And that's how you can learn from it, and then say, and sort of trust your intuition in that as well.
Yeah, which is ultimately growth and evolution as well.
Yes, exactly. Does that answer your question? Have you got anything else in that?
No, that answers it very well. Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Amazing. Thank you both for showing up and learning all about processing your emotions. Not everyone does the work in processing their emotions, so it's so great to see you both. I do have one-on-one that I do in my own practice. So on my website, if you want to visit there, you're more than welcome to, or contact me as well and ask any questions. But other than that, that is about it, unless anyone else has any other questions. That is all.
Thanks, Thelma.
Thank you.
You're welcome. See you later.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.